Hey everybody, this is episode 5 of the Inside Handoff of Football podcast. This is it, boys. We are in the home stretch. One more episode, and then we will be talking about actual live regular season games that have happened. No more speculating or pontificating or waxing poetic on what the season might hold. We'll actually be able to discuss what the season does hold. But this is it. This is the last training camp edition of our show. Next week kicks off regular season coverage. Of course, I'm your host, Johnny V, and it is a pleasure being here with you guys wherever you are watching and or listening to us. I hope you guys enjoy our content. Give us a like and a subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. For Spotify, subscribe. Follow the playlist. If you're on YouTube, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and follow along. Comment. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, and we'll do what we can. Joining me, as always, of course, is my co-hosts and colleagues, my boys. Jer, how you doing?
I'm doing a lot better than Northwestern football is doing right now. You know, just going over some news and notes from. We got a lot of stuff to cover tonight. I mean, it's fair. It's cut week, so there's guys that you weren't expecting to get cut, and there were guys you were expecting to get cut. So it's been a busy week in the NFL.
It absolutely has, and of course, we will definitely be deep diving into who got cut and who didn't, and those sorts of things. Of course, the third face here, Zach, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Having an early night for you boys. Doing my part for the podcast.
It's not 2 a.m.
It is not 2 a.m. That's a huge plus around these parts. Um, all right, we're just gonna jump right in, and we are going to break the huddle this week. We got a lot of stuff to talk about here. Now, we're not going to deep dive into all of it because there's just so much. Like Jer said, it's cut week. So teams had to drop, 15 to 20 guys. Excuse me.
Can't spend 20 minutes on Josh Rosen tonight.
Well, I mean, that was a different topic altogether, for the most part. Yeah, we're gonna jump right in, and this is something that we've talked a lot about the situation with this team. We've talked a lot about the situation with these two quarterbacks, but New England has their guy. New England has picked their man, and their man is not Cam. Cam Newton got cut on Monday. Mac Jones has been anointed the starter in New England. Yeah. Who saw
I would
that
like to
coming?
start. I would like to start
Floor
and
is yours.
say I was wrong. Because last episode, I said that Cam was going to be the starter. So clearly that is not the case. We put out many reasons why we thought the possibility of Cam being the starter was the more likely of the two possibilities. And again, it didn't turn out to be true. So I would like to apologize for my strong stance and admit I was wrong. That's my start.
I mean, I don't think we saw this coming. I think, yeah, Cam had the COVID testing screw up and all that, but more mitigating factor was, did you see the way he played last year? I don't think he played up to the caliber of a QB1. And yes, there were factors of him not having, great wide receivers, great guys to catch the ball, which they did address this offseason. And I think this is a perfect example of the preseason making a difference. We see, an offensive lineman or a corner playing in the third preseason game where they're definitely playing to make the roster, and we very rarely, if ever, see a situation where this quarterback is playing this preseason to become the starting quarterback. And to be fair, if you're getting top 3 pick with a quarterback, it's a foregone conclusion the guy's probably going to start. That I don't mean situations like that. I mean a situation where a guy is obviously not picked to be the starter week 1. I don't think they picked Mac Jones with the idea that he's going to be the starter week 1. I don't. It's just so out of the realm of what Bill Belichick does. He's not going to start a rookie quarterback week 1. I mean, he spent 20 years with Brady, who he himself did not start the season as a rookie. I mean, was Cam going to get hurt week 8 and then you throw him in, and if he's good, go with it? Sure. I could absolutely see that happening. But for Bill to cut Cam Newton and put in Mac Jones, I mean, I don't think anyone saw this coming, and it's exciting. I'm more excited now to watch New England play, just to see how this kid's going to look with all these new weapons around him. Oh, did Bill strike gold again? We'll have to wait and see. I mean, their wide receivers need to stay healthy, but that's a whole other thing.
It really is. I mean, we talked about it a lot. I'm a guy. I picked Mac Jones in our Dynasty League, so yeah, I'm happy as crap to see him getting the job right from the jump. Nobody saw it coming. I mean, I saw that Mac was looking good in preseason. I watched the games and I saw something. Something that could be molded into good to great talent just because of he wasn't always playing with the ones, and he was looking good with the twos, and that's the sign of a good quarterback when you can look good with the twos, hitting tight windows and hitting making your reads and your passes and putting the ball where you're supposed to be putting the ball is tough to do, and that's more what you're looking for in quarterbacks, right? I mean, is hitting that window, hitting that spot. Because the twos, they're not always going to make those catches. There's a reason why they're the twos and the threes, and trying to work their way up. They're not always going to make those catches, but it's about putting the ball where it's supposed to be. And Mac looked good doing exactly that. I did not think there was a snowball's chance in heck that Cam Newton was going to get cut. I mean, I figured at the best case scenario as an owner of Mac Jones is he gets named the starter with Cam sitting there in case he stumbles. And then Bill can just be like, well, he just wasn't ready. We thought he was, but he wasn't. And just move on in that, effervescent Bill Belichick way of saying I was wrong without actually saying I was wrong. So
don't talk about my mistakes. Let's just talk about who we're playing next week.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, I'm not... I'm shocked that Newton was cut. You know what I mean? And it's not even like Newton was getting paid a lot. In the grand scheme of things, he was making not much money, I don't think. Like, this isn't a huge cap-saving maneuver, I don't think, really. Like, I mean, yes, it saves them some cap room, because obviously they're going from, Cam Newton, who I think was making, like, 9, 10, I think? He was definitely on the low end. And you're going from that to, Brian Hoyer, who's making 1 to 2. Yeah, okay, you're saving a fair amount of space there. I don't even know the specific cap numbers of what they're actually saving versus dead money, because I don't, it's weird. The cap's weird that way, you don't know the numbers until you know the numbers, and I haven't looked into the numbers as far.
So it's a dead cap hit for Newton for just over 3.5 million right now.
So I mean, it's whoa boy. First comment of the night, and I'm already forgetting how to speak English. It's gonna be a long night, I guess. Yeah, I didn't see it coming. I figured at the very least Newton would sit on the bench and be the safety net, as it were. Should something happen to Mac, that he could just slip back in there and let Mac continue seasoning, getting his reps in practice and places like that. So I'm shocked. I am very shocked that this happened. It's a very Bill Belichick move, though. It's flashy. It's big. You never see it coming. And it's something we're all talking about, which is the epitome of a Bill Belichick move.
Now we're going to find out this year what's in the Big Mac sauce.
We're going to find out if he can break the curse. I mean, when was the last time an Alabama quarterback got to the playoffs?
I'm gonna need time if I'm looking that up. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
I mean, we'll answer that one next week. But that's a trivia question right there. The last Alabama quarterback to make it to the postseason. Alabama's a great school, and it's a phenomenal factory for every position except quarterback. It's the epitome of a program school. You just need to be able to play the offense well to succeed as a quarterback in Alabama. You
Yeah, I've
don't.
got your answer actually.
You've got the answer.
1977.
I think it's like the early '90s. No.
One
1977.
one guy broke the curse. I can't find a date on this article though.
Oh boy.
AJ McCarron started Saturday night's rainy home playoff game for the Cincinnati
Correct.
Bengals. The
Single
game the
serve.
game against the Steelers. Now, here's the catch. In the process, he broke a 33-year streak between playoff starts for Alabama quarterbacks.
1977.
If I'm
The
remembering
last one,
correctly,
1983.
if I'm remembering
Damn.
correctly, did Andy not get hurt in the season finale game, like the last game of the season that year, and that's why AJ was starting? Okay, so I mean that almost doesn't even count, really. I mean,
I want to say that was the game with the nasty hit near the end.
I want to say you're right,
I forget who made the hit though.
but I mean, Alabama quarterbacks do not have success. There are a lot of them, and then, they for the most part do get drafted, but they end up being clipboard carriers in the NFL because they don't have that it factor, I guess, as being able to do more than just plug and play in the offense. Now, that said, if there is a system that could plug in an Alabama quarterback and succeed, it's probably New England with Belichick's system.
Yeah, I mean Saban and Belichick run very similar systems, and like you said, if there's a guy who's going to tap into that, it's going to be Bill Belichick. I mean, I don't think there's going to be that much of a learning curve for just the system that he's running. Not. I mean, there's going to be a learning curve for the NFL and so on, but I think it's going to be a lot easier for a guy like Mac Jones to go from Nick Saban to Bill Belichick. Does it go anywhere? Wait and see.
Who knows? It's an interesting story that we're going to watch progress over the next couple of seasons to see whether or not Mac Jones is anointed as the next god of the NFL, or if he's just we'll find out, I guess, over the next few years. Anything more you want to add on this one, Zach? You were pretty light on this topic.
Yeah, I want to guess to when it comes to Mac, he's. I don't expect much success early, to be honest. I expect not bad football. I expect similar to what Tua did. If funny, both Alabama quarterbacks didn't mean to do it that way, but low turnovers, probably not too high of yards, played safe, hand the ball off a lot, just do a few things here and there. I don't expect like you have him in fantasy. I wouldn't be starting him this year if I were you. But outside of that, like you guys basically hit everything on the head with how it's going. I don't need to add much more to that. We'll see how it goes. I'm excited for it. I like any young quarterback to watch, and especially New England's been so boring. It's been the same thing over and over again. So anything different is exciting for that.
Well, they've got tight ends who can catch the football this year, so that's better than last year.
But it's what they had 7 years ago.
Yep.
That's what they've had for the entirety of pretty much the entire run with Brady. Had good tight ends for the most part. Granted, we don't talk about one of them because
Hunter Henry's going to kill it out there.
He just might. I mean, there was a lot of hype for him, coming in, taking Antonio Gates' spot, and that didn't help him. But that's a different conversation for a different day. All right, let's move on to our next one. Another extension signed here in the preseason. Harrison Smith one of the better known safeties in the league, signed a 4-year, $64 million extension to stay in Minnesota.
How old is he? Is he 34? I think he's like 34 or something, right?
I don't think he's that old.
No?
I
Maybe I'm doing him dirty.
I think you might
Okay.
be, because that's pretty old. Um,
Can anyone check real quick? Because like I was based off because I thought he was older. I was genuinely surprised on the term on the deal. But if his age isn't, maybe he's only like 31. It's
he's
not really
32.
that surprising.
He's 32.
Eh, yeah, it's not that bad then. I thought he was a little older. Good for him. Good deal either way. His play hasn't regressed. He's a really good player. So I think that's a solid deal. You can move him anywhere. You can play him in nickel package. Well, they do play him in nickel. He's a safety. He's always playing. But like you can drop him down the slot to cover the tight end or the running back. He bangs. He hits hard. He doesn't mess around that way. Plays great in zone coverage. Very intelligent veteran. There's That's just a great re-signing. I don't. There's good deal by them. Some at least it was Minnesota, right? There's
Yep.
something good they're doing finally.
Yep.
At least they're doing something right.
Well, I think it's important they can address, the defense, really. Interesting point about the signing is he's reliable. He's missed just 5 games due to injury in his entire career, and he has not missed a single game since 2016. So, they need some reliable guys on that defense who can kind of shore up some things, and because the offense is fine, if not spectacular, would probably be a good way to describe the Vikings offense. So if they can fix up some issues on defense, then are they a playoff team this year? I don't know if I'd go that far. But
The rest of their DBs are questionable at best.
yeah, exactly. So I think it's a matter of they're probably going to need to spend the next couple of years fixing up the holes on the defense, and this is a perfect start. But this is the first step. Like Zach says, they need to fix a lot more than just this one thing. It's a good signing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything bad you can really say about this. You pointed out the Iron Man of it all, and that's a tough thing to do in that position, really. For somebody who does, hit pretty dark. Oh, I'm feeling a sneeze.
It's a good signing because, I mean, the Vikings. Let's take a look at their defense.
They just brought Emerson. I think we're going to talk about that too, right? Emerson.
Yeah.
I mean,
all right.
overall, their team grade was 17th last year. Went 7-9. They allowed a lot of points last year. They were 29th in the league in points allowed. That's not a good sign for your defense.
Told you. Their DBs are questionable. Harrison Smith is good, but the rest are.
Yeah.
They were good there for a long stretch where they could, where they had Harrison Smith in the safety spot, and and then they had Daniil Hunter.
Xavier Rhodes when he was a
Xavier
star.
Rhodes, yeah. But they had a good interior line as well. Right? They had Daniil Hunter and Everson Griffin. There was the third one.
Can't think of it at this current moment.
Yeah, there was a third one. He was interior line guy, but they put together good defenses, but not great defenses. And that's of course something you need to do when, let's be honest, you're in a division where you have to stop Aaron Jones, where you have to stop Aaron Rodgers twice a year. That's not something you can do with, questionable DBs. And that's obviously his proven fact. Where they've not, I don't know the record against Green Bay in the last few years, but I know it's probably not good. So that is what it is. It's a good
I
signing.
mean, his pass rush and coverage grades last season were pretty spectacular, averaging around 70 for both. So, and his numbers have not dropped significantly. His best year was 2017 with a PFF grade of 91.8. I mean, yes, 2020 was his lowest PFF grade. Still, you got to do something with it, right?
And his
You
supporting
can't
cast is terrible. So
exactly. He can't carry the whole team on his own.
He's a good foundation piece that hopefully they can build the rest of the defense around, but they still have to do that, and
Exactly.
that's not something they've done. They put a lot of focus on that offense. That's where they spend the money, and it hasn't worked out. I mean, look at Kirk Cousins. They brought him in to be the savior, and now
Got every penny worth.
he's
we'll
not
talk
worth a
about
penny.
him another day because I don't want to go too deep into him.
And now he's not worth a penny, and we'll leave it at that. But they need to build a defense around Smith, and they haven't done it. But we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Minnesota more as the season goes on, I'm sure, because they always tend to be a team that gets focused because they try really hard. They just can't seem to get it done when it matters.
If they're mediocre, then we might not talk about them much.
We may or we may not. That's the thing in Minnesota, right? They're either constantly talked about because they're doing certain things, or they're not. Sadly, I think we're more likely to talk about them for bad things that they do or have done than for good things. But we'll talk about that another time. All right, let's move on to our next topic, and that is the weirdness that is the Philadelphia Eagles. Continues. Jalen Hurts has officially been named as the Week 1 starter, and after being acquired just a week and a half ago, I think, Gardner Minshew was not happy about this decision. I mean, if you've paid attention to him, he's a fighter. Yeah, he won't go down without a fight. I mean, even so far as he wanted open competition in Jacksonville, which obviously he was never going to get. But the guy, he refuses to be a number 2, and now here is number 3 on the depth chart somehow. I don't know how Joe Flacco is ahead of him on the depth chart. Can somebody explain that one to me? I can't make sense of it. But Jalen Hurts is the guy. Gardner Minshew is he's the towel boy now.
No. You put some respect on Gardner Minshew's name.
I respect him. I like Gardner. I always have. I thought he was I don't want to say a breath of fresh air, but he was something to watch in Jacksonville in their extremely crappy season and get some enjoyment out of. He
was good in Jacksonville. Yeah,
he's a character.
When he was doing the press conference for the Eagles this past week, he goes, "We were playing horse and it was getting pretty competitive. I had a button-up shirt on and I had to take that off because the game was getting a little too competitive. I think that really stood out. I think that might have played a role in why I'm here. I was up and then we started talking ball. He was kind of distracting me. Took my shirt off and it didn't help. He just continued to beat me. That's why I'm back. I'm back for revenge." How can you not root for a guy like that? Come on.
He's the epitome of character.
Is a true character, and football needs more of them. And another thing, like, you see guys who are like, "Oh, I'm okay with being second on the depth chart." Not Gardner Minshew. He's not happy about that. He wants to be the starter. Is he good enough to be the starter? No. But I would rather have a backup who is entertaining as heck than have some boring, guy who's just sitting on the bench and not doing anything interesting at all, carrying a clipboard and not even being good at that.
Zach, what do you think about the Eagles quarterback room?
Oh, it's Jalen's job. I would. If Gardner's upset, that sucks. But I don't think he's that upset. I think he'll get past it. Yeah, it's football. He's just gonna do his thing. Gardner, yeah, definitely a great character. Jalen Hurts is pretty interesting. That stat I shared that in the group about him being the fourth quarterback or whatever to have 200-300-yard games while rushing for 60 yards as well.
Yep.
That was something. He shows his explosiveness, shows his capabilities. Whether that's a thing he can do often is to be determined, but that still shows that he's got a lot of talent. They have the what is it, Jalen Reagor and Devonta Smith. They're more going to be about Jalen Hurts' success than anything. If they're not ready to win and be true NFL wide receivers, it doesn't really matter. I guess it shouldn't doesn't matter, but unless Jalen Hurts is coming and going to play like in an MVP caliber type of player, he's not going to be able to carry guys that aren't NFL wide receivers. They need to do their job. They need to get open. They need to win contested catches. They need to do all those things. Otherwise, it will be a mediocre offense because Miles, I don't like. Miles Sanders isn't a star. They don't have stars anywhere at this point, so they need to really get it done. But when it comes to the quarterback room, I like Jalen Hurts. I think if Joe Flacco is the backup, it's technically only this for this season, and he won't be next year. Gardner Minshew, I think he's going to be a backup in this league for a long time, and I think it'll be interesting watching the Eagles this year.
I think an interesting part of Jalen Hurts' career so far is he came in, halfway through the year last year?
Yeah.
So we haven't really seen much of Jalen Hurts, and what we have seen was relatively good. See, I don't understand why a lot of the talk in the offseason is, is Hurts even going to be the starter? If Hurts is bad, we're just going to look for a quarterback next year. I mean, he's played, 7, 8 games in his career? Give the guy a chance. I mean, like Zach says, you got to worry about the fact that he's not going to have the greatest set of hands he's throwing to. I mean, the most tenured guy on that side of the ball is Zach Ertz, maybe?
Yeah.
So, I think a quarterback is only as good as the guys he's throwing to. So, can Jalen Hurts make chicken salad out of chicken maybe? I mean, I think he's good enough to do it if he's given the opportunity, and obviously him being the starter, he's going to have the chance to prove that, hey, there's no Gardner Minshew talk. There's no, drafting a quarterback talk. This is my team, and I'm going to show why, I'm the starter.
I think there's a problem is, like, he might get the Drew Lock kind of treatment and other quarterbacks where, like, this is his second year. If he has a mediocre year this year, but the team's really bad, there's going to be a flashy quarterback prospect in their face. Do they want to give Jalen Hurts another chance when he hasn't really done much, or take the flashy QB that will be on a cheap deal for 4 years opposed to Jalen Hurts 2 years? It's the situation that lots of teams are going to continue to run into. I'm not a big fan of it's seeming to be a bigger problem to take a quarterback in the second round. There's not really a benefit to it because every guy, even when, for example, Derek Carr has been a pretty good success, and Dak Prescott even, I don't think he was second round. Was he second round?
He was fourth.
Fourth. But the later round guys, as soon as you start them, they don't have the same respect as a first rounder does. You know what I mean? Almost as soon as a first rounder starts showing his potential in any way, they're like, okay, well, that's the guy. Look, even Sam Darnold struggled.
We'll see this happen with Justin Fields in a couple of weeks, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Exact thing you just said.
They get so much more respect where a second rounder, it's like, unless you absolutely blow our minds, we're going to just move. If we have a bad record, we're going to take the first rounder that looks like a star, and good luck to you. And I don't know if I necessarily blame them, but it's just why spend the second round pick on the guy, Because here's the problem about going a second rounder. If you're drafting him in the second round, that means you're not going to play him in his rookie year. You don't have really any intent to do that. You probably don't even really intend to play him in his second year. So if you don't play him in his first and most of his second year, where is your deciding year? You're going to run him the third year, then you only have 1 year after that. You put yourself in a spot. You're better off using a second round pick on a linebacker or a lineman or something else in the draft that can help your team immediately. Why would you take a quarterback that, like I said, with Derek Carr, he's been successful. Derek Carr's had a very good year, and every year we hear, is Derek Carr going to get replaced? Are they going to move on from Derek Carr? Da 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 da. Like, where does a second rounder ever, like, how good do you actually have to be as a second rounder? Because if Derek Carr was a first rounder, I don't know if we hear the same talks. I don't really.
I think also the expectations might be higher. Derek Carr is a first-round quarterback. I don't think he's performing to that potential. I mean, look at Jameis Winston.
Yeah.
First-round quarterback, doesn't get a second contract.
Look at him. He's a starter again, though.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, that's also... He lucked into a good situation there also, with Brees being on his last year and everything kind of coming together for him.
I think Derek Carr... Though, in Oakland, you know, he had some good seasons.
I just mean, like, it feels like first rounders, just because they're drafted in the first round, they have more of a chance. Whether it's after that team moves on, like, there's a list of them. Sam Darnold's on the team. Marcus Mariota is a backup, I guess, but Ryan Tannehill's a starter. Jameis Winston's a starter. You know, the second rounders, though, or the later rounders, they just get pushed to that immediate bench role, and that's all they really have, and they don't really get that shot again. You know, you got like 2 years to kill it, and that's not it. Like, it's sure for all young players. I'm not going to pretend like it's not, but I just feel like it's really bad for second round quarterbacks, and there's just no point of using that high of a draft pick on that position.
Quarterback, you need to use a player, obviously, because you can save the money, but is it worth having a guy ride the bench if you're just saving money for 2-3 years?
Yeah, what's the point?
If you're taking a quarterback in the first round, you should have an immediate need for them. You know, a quarterback drafted in the first round shouldn't be the guy carrying the clipboard. Just because you've spent so much on them, both financially and draft capital-wise. Because, you know, that first round pick is so important. You know, it just, you can fill nearly any position with it, and it just, you want that guy to make an immediate impact on your roster at whatever position you take them in. So if you take a quarterback in the first round and that guy just spends a season or two carrying around the clipboard, it needs to be an exceptional situation. Like, you know, the prime example of it working is obviously Aaron Rodgers. You know, he was drafted because he fell to the Green Bay position. You know, he free fell to that position, and he was probably the best player on the board. You know, the best available talent. And when you have a situation like that develop, and you don't have an immediate need for it, but you can see the need in, you know, a couple or 3 seasons, just like Green Bay did, knowing that Brett was, you know, on his, I don't want to say last legs, because he still, you know, performed well after leaving Green Bay, you know, after we forced him out. So, you know, it fails more often than it works in that regard when your first round quarterback isn't the guy getting it right away. You know, it can work if, you know, it takes, you know, 6 weeks, 8 weeks for them to take the job, to, you know, because it takes that time. Unless you've got a situation where it is a quarterback going back to their coach. Yeah, like if your college coach has moved up to the NFL and you get drafted by them, then you're pretty good, because, you know, the playbooks are going to be the same, the play calling style is going to be similar. You know, so you're going to have a leg up, that you're going to be pretty well entrenched in the offense already, that you wouldn't have if you're, you know, having to come to a new team, a new city, a new coaching staff, a new system, a new scheme, and all of those things that are not easy to learn. You know, so it takes time to learn those things, and being ready by week 1 is tough. Yeah, it's a very tough thing to do. That's why a lot of times quarterbacks kind of, I don't want to say fall on their face at the beginning, but they don't come out of the gate. It's a marathon, not a sprint, I guess, is the gist of what I'm getting at. And everybody sees the sprint, not the marathon. You know, reporters see the sprint. Fans see the sprint.
Sorry for cutting you off. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I mean, that's how we work things here. Everybody's jumping in on everybody. That's just how it works.
I
But
just
The guy was saying no.
it's not. It's a marathon, not a sprint for a starting quarterback. I'd rather have my starting quarterback take his time to learn my offense than not. So if you're a coach and you're drafting a quarterback to save your own ass, you failed as a coach already. Like, and that's a pretty good thing. Pretty statistical. I don't want to say statistical because I don't know the statistics. I'm not Jared. I didn't spend my time looking into these statistics, but it seems to be a pretty common fact that when a coach drafts a quarterback with the hopes of knowing he's in the hot seat and knowing if this guy doesn't succeed right away, my butt is looking for a new job next spring, you've screwed up already to be in that situation in the first place. So it just, yeah, it is what it is, but if you're going to take a quarterback in the first, you want them to make an immediate impact.
I agree. I think in general you kind of want that. I don't think, again, that adds kind of to my second round thing because assuming a quarterback falling to the second round, the reason why he fell to the second round is you don't believe he's ready to start. That's why all those teams skipped all
the immediate need for it. It is also a thing.
So if you don't, why would you take a guy that you basically have just identified as a guy that isn't ready to help you and then just burn a year or burn a year plus for no apparent reason just to throw him in to give him 12 games, 18 games to show his best? Like, it's been a pretty common thing that a quarterback needs to start 32 games to show you what he has. And now most of these quarterbacks are getting like 19 games. That's not enough. And I'm not even necessarily blaming the coaching staff for doing that because they got to play who's ready. You know what I mean? So if they're not ready, they're not getting those games. And then they didn't play well. And like you said, they're butts on the hot seat. You know what I mean? So they're like, okay, well, I gave you 19 games, but you gave me a 8-11 record in those 19 games. So I got to go get myself a Teddy Bridgewater. You know what I mean? Because I don't want to get fired right now. So, now you're in that situation. That's why I'm more blaming the general managers for putting those guys in that situation. If we weren't fully invested in Drew Lock as the guy, why did we use the pick? It's just not a point. If a team isn't fully invested in the guy in the second round, don't do it. The first round, you're going to be invested. Almost any team. Lamar Jackson got drafted. People were like, Joe Flacco was the starter, but everybody in the world knew that Lamar Jackson was going to be that starter. Trey Lance, he got drafted right now to San Francisco. Everybody knows that at some point Trey Lance is going to take the job from Jimmy. Is it going to be week 1, week 7, week 10? They're invested in him. Second rounders, you're not invested in. You're just it's whatever. And and it shouldn't be whatever because there are very good players. We're talking about in the last just couple of drafts, DK Metcalf, Darius Leonard, you know what I mean? A.J. Brown. You're skipping on very talented players in these drafts to get a guy you have zero intent to really play, have investment in. Why? Why would you do that to your team? Why would you be, especially teams early, guys that are taking guys in the 7th pick in the second round for a quarterback and you don't plan on using that guy? You're passing dudes, these are first round talents and you're a team that's been struggling.
Well, here's a perfect example of that. Jordan Love.
I was just
going to ride the bench for another year.
Yeah, I was just going to make the reference of this is just another episode of how the Green Bay Packers management has failed their fan base.
I wasn't trying to pick on a certain franchise. It's unfortunate they are the franchise that does.
You know that old saying, if the shoe fits.
Exactly.
Well, the shoe fits pretty nice around Brian Gutekunst's foot right now.
Exactly. We all think they should have took a wide receiver. They could have took anything. It didn't, even if it's not a wide receiver. We thought it was a wide receiver. You could have took a linebacker, defensive lineman, offensive lineman, cornerback, whatever you wanted. Why'd you take a position that you have is not going to help you win? You're in a winning. It doesn't make sense. If you're not if that's not investment for you, then just move on. Are they paying? What are they? 2 years into that now? No, 1 year. Sorry, it's good. After this year, it's going to be.
They're going to be 2 years after this year because he's not starting over Aaron Rodgers this year, so he's going to ride the bench for another 18 games.
So hear me out. For an example, we'll just say Aaron Rodgers leaves. We don't know. So I'm just making this up. Aaron Rodgers leaves after this season. Jordan Love comes in. For whatever reason, say there's some injuries there, you know what I mean? Devontae was banged up throughout the year, whatever it is. He doesn't play great. You know what I mean? They end up with a bad record, and a really good quarterback is available for them at their pick. What do they do there? They've already used 2 years of 3 years, sorry, at that point of Jordan Love's contract. The 1 year they had of him, he didn't play well. You know what I mean? And you have a good quarterback in front of you at that draft pick that's going to be on a 4 year cheap deal. Do you move on from Jordan Love? Because if you don't, now you're tied to Jordan Love, and if he has a good year but not a great year, now you got to think: am I paying this guy? Am I move? What are you gonna like? Now you're in another spot, and we'll just say he has an okay goodish year, but you guys have a pretty good record. Now you're not getting a good quarterback anymore. You know what I mean? Now you're kind of stuck with Jordan Love or looking to free agency. It's a silly
You've only got
spot
one season of real
right?
content on him, right?
Right? Like what? Like that's not. How do you make an evaluation off 16 games? And I go back to this with almost everything I do. Nick Foles had an amazing season. I don't know if people remember how good that 1 year it was. I think it was like 32 touchdowns and like 5 interceptions or something. Are you able to pull up the stats real quick? I don't want to completely make it up, but he had a really good season. Could you imagine that was his final contract year as off a rookie deal, and he only played? He'd get paid. Like it's. We'll see the stats. You'll see my point.
Okay.
It's ridiculously well. Jared pulls up the stats. It's ridiculously easy for a quarterback to lose their job because it just is. It's entirely based on success. You know, the offense runs through them, and if you can't get it done, you will be the fall guy for it. Whether or not that's necessarily true, I mean, there's so many situations that we talk about. Quarterbacks not getting a chance to shine. I think if we dug deep into some of those failed first round quarterbacks, you'd probably see that I have no idea by this. I'm purely spitballing on this, but I would probably guess that somewhere in the range of 75% of them have a different coach in year two.
Oh, it's a big deal. Yeah,
And
different
that
coaching, a lot of that stuff.
completely
Yeah,
changes so much because then
yeah.
you have to learn an entirely new offense again, and it just it doesn't always work, because
And
not.
sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say that not every quarterback is well suited to every coach's schemes. That's just a
That
fact.
and to your point about how it was like how important the position is, like if you say you're going to like say a pass like you only have 1 year of thing. If say there's a pass rusher that had like 18 sacks and you sign him to a massive deal, if he was to only get 60% of that, that's still a productive guy. You know what I mean? 60% of 18 sacks, that's still he may not be living up to his contract, but you're still getting a very valuable player to your team.
Still getting
If
close
you
to
sign a
double digit
quarter
stacks, yeah.
if you sign a quarterback to a very big deal, like and he played at that kind of level and he only performs to 60% of that, you have a bad player now.
I mean, I think the
You no
prime example
longer
of
have a
that is
good
Kirk
quarterback.
Cousins. They signed him to that.
He plays better than that. He's better than 60% of his contract, and he's still not good enough. You know what I mean? Once you pay a quarterback, you need that guy to like
You need
live
to
up to
win.
about like 85 to 90% of his contract, or he's now a detriment to your team.
You need
Where at
you need to
other
win.
positions, you can overpay them, and it's still okay to your team.
The quarterback
Jared, do
is
you
the
happen to have
guy
the
that
stat?
reaps the rewards. Like that's the thing. Like it's the quarterbacks that get the credit for the catches. It's the quarterbacks that get the credit. Like if I were to say immaculate reception, who are you thinking of? Are you thinking of Terry Bradshaw or are you thinking of Franco Harris? Most people go right to Terry Bradshaw, but it was really Franco Harris that made that play. The Sea of Hands. Who do you talk about? The was Kenny Stabler? I think was the Sea of Hands. It was an Oakland
He-
play. So I mean, I want to say it was Kenny Stabler. I could be wrong about that. It could have been before him, but is it the quarterback you think of, or is it the guy who manages to rip that ball out of the air and actually make the catch? It just The quarterbacks get the success, but they don't get lauded for the failures as everybody else. Then it's the receiver couldn't catch the ball. The receiver couldn't do anything. But, when the receiver makes the great catch, makes the great play, you know.
Did you happen to get that stat, Jer, that he had that year?
Yeah. So we have Nick Foles' second year for Philadelphia, which would have been 2013. He played 13 games, started 10, went 8-2, had a completion percentage of 64. Now get this: 27 touchdowns to 2 interceptions.
Yeah, see?
He played phenomenal that year. A lot
Now
of his
imagine that was
best years that
Sorry for
year.
you. Right?
Yeah.
Right? That's what I'm saying. That's what I always revert back to. Like, you can't judge a quarterback of such small production, whether he's amazing or bad. It's just not enough. It's not a fair evaluation. Because Nick Foles, if that was his final year of a deal, would likely have got paid a lot of money. But it wasn't his final year. That's the only reason. So they got to see a little bit more of Nick Foles and was like, uh-oh, that's not the guy. But, like, that's why you want to play them earlier in the contract, so you can get more time to evaluate them. It's a risky game. The Green Bay Packers, I think, are going to get screwed by that. They better hope Jordan Love's good. If he's not good, they're screwed. That was a really bad pick.
Absolutely. Okay, clearly we've chased our white rabbit for this week. Because that was not even remotely close to anything we had in the notes for the last 10 minutes or so. But that's what we do. We chase rabbits around these parts. One of these weeks I'm going to end up editing in a white rabbit dancing across the screen when we do that. And go off chasing rabbits. But
on to the interesting part.
I digress. Let's move on to the next stuff, and some notable names. We'll get to the average Joes at the end, but these are guys with serious effects on their rosters, either real life or dynasty wise, fantasy wise. J.K. Dobbins goes to the IR. We had the I don't want to say disadvantage, or the advantage of the fact that we had on NFL Network watching that while we were doing our redraft draft that afternoon and evening. J.K. Dobbins goes down, ends up on the IR with an ACL tear.
I mean, he's done for a little while, and everyone's jumping aboard the Gus bus, and I think there's some value there, but I don't think they have a guy who can fill J.K. Dobbins' shoes. He was gonna be the guy in Baltimore, and do you switch to a running back by committee? Do you give Gus a little bit more? I mean, it sucks for Baltimore, but you got to keep going. And did they end up picking up anybody? I don't
think they did.
No,
think they picked
got
anybody up yet.
Bryson Williams and Justice Hill, both on my dynasty team.
Yeah, so I don't think. I mean, I think they're going to give Gus opportunity to see, can you carry this team? If you can't, then we need a guy who can lead this rushing attack, take the team further than, where they currently are, which is they're down a starting running back who, and another thing is, got Lamar Jackson. And yes, that's probably going to mean Lamar is less likely to hand it off and just run it himself. But you can't risk doing that too much, because then Lamar takes one bad hit. He goes down, and that entire team turns into a dumpster fire real quick. It sucks, and he was projected to do really, really well this year. And yeah, we'll see what they do going forward.
I mean, I think it's pretty safe to say that if the Gus Bus stalls early in the season, they will be looking to one of those veteran names to come in and help them out, because that is a team that can make a run. That is a tough division, but Baltimore is well suited to make a run and maybe even go deep. So they definitely need a running back that controls that offense a bit more. Otherwise, the only threat to run the ball is Lamar himself, and you know, the more he has to do that, the more likely he is to get hit and hurt, and that just completely ruins their entire season. Period. Cold turkey.
And there's guys that are free agents right now that could come and help that offense. Is Adrian Peterson working anywhere? I don't think. Le'Veon Bell.
Yep, Lev Bell.
Todd Gurley. Mm-hmm. So there's some guys out there who you could plug in and are good enough to fill that role. A good third down back. You bring in a guy, he fills that role well to the point where, okay, we can still use Gus in certain situations, but we're not overusing him. We're not overexploiting him and asking him to do things that he can't do. So you bring in the veteran, plug him in, and it saves your entire offense, essentially.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to our next guy. Again, on the IR. I think this is like the third or fourth season he's ended up there. Or has missed significant amounts of time. T.Y. Hilton, again, off to the IR. Now, this one is presumed that he will return from this. This isn't a season ender. So, yeah, T.Y. Hilton again to the IR. Is anybody surprised by this, or is this just was kind of a matter of time thing?
It's a matter of when, not if, unfortunately. And man, that Colts offense looks like a dumpster fire right now. I mean, Carson Wentz isn't, he's on COVID protocol. T.Y. Hilton's out at least 3 weeks. It's just a mess. And coming into the season, there were such high hopes, and everything's just falling apart. And that's what happens when you try and run your offense through Carson Wentz. Surprise, surprise.
I think T.Y. is probably the one player we can't point at and be like, yeah, Carson brought a curse to this team, because it was inevitable that T.Y. would end up missing time, because that's just, ever since Luck retired, really, T.Y. gets hurt at least once per season. Nothing you wanted to add there, Zach? I don't think you said anything. Just gave us a head shake.
Sorry, no, they not, like Jared's mentioning with their offense, it's pretty questionable right now. Clearly got a good offensive line, but Carson Wentz to be determined of what he's going to be, especially with the time he's missed between the injury and now COVID protocol. Their wide receivers have like less than a total of 30 games played between them all. Like they don't have experience on the offensive side. Even their tight ends aren't like overly experienced. Like, what is it, Mo Alley Cox? He's not exactly a guy who has a lot of reps as a starting tight end. I expect the ball to be handed off a lot. I expect a lot of low-scoring games. Watching the Colts, I think they should address this. Though I was saying this to you guys know him, but the audience will not. Our friend Keldar, that soon as the Julio Jones news was real, and it was especially when it was coming out that they weren't going to be able to get a first round pick for Julio, they should have. There's no way they shouldn't have chased Julio Jones. They definitely should not have let Julio Jones go in their division for a second round pick when they could have got Julio. That was a mistake. That was a mistake then, and as every week goes by, the mistake becomes more and more evident. If they were even to offer a second and a fifth, that is a better package than the Titans. And now the Titans don't have Julio Jones. You guys have Julio Jones. And now Ty being hurt isn't that big of a deal. The Titans offense doesn't look that scary. That was a big miss by them. And I don't think it's talked about enough, sorry. But that was a very low price, and they let their biggest need on their team get taken for cheap, who's a star, by a division rival. That was a bad idea. That was terrible.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of teams we can point at and say, seriously, Julio Jones went for a second. You couldn't have done better than that? I mean, I look at my own franchise as one of those situations where it's like, hello, Julio Jones and Devonta Adams. You want to make peace with Aaron Rodgers? You give him those two guys to throw the ball at and see whether or not he can, calm down from
Still
that.
missed them by 15 yards, but it would look nice.
I'm sorry, what? I'm talking about Aaron
We're on
Rodgers,
a
not
podcast.
Dak Prescott.
You can't make fun of Aaron Rodgers, man. Come on.
I'm sorry. I got confused. I thought I said that this is what Green Bay should have done, not Dallas.
Dallas doesn't need it. Dallas already has 3 of the best wide receivers in the league. They don't.
All right.
They don't need a washed-up 34-year-old.
I'm curious to know, what year do you think this is, Jer?
This is 2021.
Oh, okay. Because the way you're talking, I thought it was like 1995 or maybe even like
Might as well be.
1975 or something.
Boys, we're going to lose all respect that our podcast can have, but you guys both talking bad about 2 of the best quarterbacks in the league. Come on, man. Like, if Dak and Aaron Rodgers are bad, who's good?
Well, I didn't say Dak was bad, just that, when he misses by a lot.
Because he doesn't miss.
You're right.
I'm so
he just misses
disappointed
games.
Dak got hurt last year because Dak was on record or on pace to break so many records last year, and he got hurt. I wish he would have gotten the full season to actually play to his potential last year.
Things. There's nothing worse for me than being like, oh, play, like, this is just a general thing across all sports. I hate pace. It doesn't matter. It's especially like early in the season, right? Like, if Derrick Henry goes out in week 1 and rushes for 200 yards, which is not unfathomable, suddenly he's on pace for a 2,600-yard season. Like, no!
3,200. 3,400.
30. You're right. My math was awful there. Suddenly he's on pace for a 3,400-yard season. Like, no, that's not going to happen. Statistics are roller coasters. That's not as bad as some sports. Hockey, you have a hat trick in the first game and suddenly you're on pace for 300 goals. Like, no, it's not how sports works. You're going to get shut down some weeks.
James Conner was on pace for like 1,200 rushing yards halfway through the season last year in a nice juicy contract. He ended up fucking not re-signed and on a terrible deal on the Cardinals as a backup running back. Stuff happens fast.
Especially in football. Where all it takes is a strong defense to shut you down, and suddenly your pace is tanked because you've been averaging $150, and here you are barely putting together 15. But I digress. That's another topic for another day. We got one more somewhat significant name got placed on IR this week again. Nikhil Harry, putting an otherwise another lull into his story. That guy was drafted as something big. He was going to be the next big receiver in New England, and nothing.
I don't have much to add to that. They're not missing out on anything. He hasn't added to their offense yet, so meh.
He's one of those guys who is potential, and he's just not reaching it, and it's not like this is the first time. Every offseason we see, oh, Nikhil Harry looks fantastic. He's finally going to fill that
This is
role.
the breakout season.
Yeah, right? How many breakout seasons can you have for the guy when he can't play a full schedule? Or when he is playing, even live up to those expectations? He's a decent wide receiver who can't stay healthy. And when you're playing in New England, that's definitely not going to cut the mustard.
It's a kiss of death.
Cut the mustard. Who cuts mustard?
Hey, you little whippersnapper.
Yeah, get off my lawn, Zach.
I'm sorry. I don't know all the terms. I'm sorry. Maybe that's a real, I never heard it before. I'm sorry.
Should I have said YOLO? I don't know if that's your generation.
Okay, sorry about that, fellas. We had a little technical glitch here on this side. The recording counter stopped for like 40 seconds, so I was afraid we were facing some issues. So I apologize for that little awkward silence there, folks. That's my bad. All right, so that's Nikhil Harry, another one of those could have had it all kids, but couldn't have a full season.
Johnny, are you recording us on 8-track again? You really got to stop that.
Nah, man, we've upgraded to cassettes this week.
Fantastic.
All right, and now obviously, as we discussed off the top, this is cut week. Rosters get trimmed, and not just fat gets cut. There are occasionally names of significance and/or consequence, or names that just make you shake your head and go, "What?" Or guys that just generally make you go, "Huh? Why? What? Huh?" So we're gonna run through these. If you guys have something you want to say, just tell me to stop, and we'll leave it. You guys can have a few sentences on each of these guys because it's not an insignificantly sized list. So all right, the first one, the Cincinnati Bengals cut offensive guard Michael Jordan. Jared, what joke do you have for us for that? Because we know you well enough to know you have one.
I don't have any joke. What are you talking about? This man was cut by the Cincinnati Bengals. Okay? He is not playing football at the moment. This is an important situation. It's not his fault. It was his last dance.
I didn't expect something that subtle. Okay.
Got to build up to it,
I expected something more like on the nose, but that was a bit more subtle. So kudos to you for that one, good sir. All right, next one. Rashad Perryman was cut by the Lions. He has since landed on his feet in Chicago. Carl Joseph.
Hang on.
Okay.
Rashad Perryman. I was a bit surprised by this one. The Lions don't exactly have a top-tier receivers room. But even then, he's decent. He's unspectacular. He's probably fifth in the depth chart right now in Chicago. So it is what it is. He's fine, but he's probably not going to see the field that much.
More reps for Trinity Benson and on the Lions. Let's go.
What about
Trinity, baby?
What about Amon-Ra St. Brown? Right, isn't that his name?
I like him. Keldar stole him from me in the draft. I was not happy.
I mean, I like those St. Brown boys. I would like to have seen them.
One's on your list right now, isn't he?
Yep.
Is he?
Yeah.
We're getting there.
He got cut.
Oh, yeah, I guess he is on my list. That's unfortunate. I put the list together and I didn't quite read the names entirely. All right, safety Carl Joseph was cut by the Raiders.
That one surprises me. He was an early pick. I thought he had potential. thought they could have at least traded him somewhere in the league for like a 7th or something. I'm surprised about that. And he's a hard hitting safety. There's always roles for those somewhere in the league. I think he'll find a new team by the time the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I don't see him sitting in these. I don't see him going home and counting his dollars quite yet. I think he's still got another run left in him somewhere. Um, all right, Bernardrick McKinney, linebacker, was cut by the Dolphins. This next one tugs at my core because I love this guy, not just because he has an awesome name, but because he was a great player, played for Green Bay for a long time before moving on to not quite so greener pastures. Ha ha, Clinton Dix, safety,
There's
was
nothing
cut by
funny
the
about this
49ers.
cut.
There's not. I don't like this cut at all. I like Ha ha.
Yeah, he's fallen off from where he was about 5 years ago.
Yeah, he definitely. When he went to Washington, it all kind of started going downhill from there. That's at least in part because he chose to go to Washington. Seriously? Who chooses to go to Washington? That's not
Especially
Washington.
on that defense. You're going to fall down the depth chart real quick unless you can keep up with those guys.
It just, that's, oh boy. I never liked it when he left in the first place. I would have liked to have seen him stay because I liked him. All right, here's one. Zach, I don't know if you have anything to say about this one. Trevor Siemian, the quarterback, was cut by the Saints. I didn't even know he was on the roster there.
Good for him for almost making a team.
I mean, he wasn't good in Denver, and the Saints don't need a third quarterback on the roster right now. So
Do they have two on the roster right now?
Well, they've got a.
Yeah, they've got Winston.
Even if he is he's like a hybrid.
I'm sorry, but
Taysom
Hill is not a quarterback. Taysom Hill is not an NFL quarterback. I guess I should specify. I don't. If you want to get fancy and run him out of the Wildcat, which is basically what I'd call it when he takes snaps behind center, he's not an NFL quarterback. You converted him to a tight end. Just let him be that because he's not awful at it. Just let him get his reps at tight end and actually maybe have a career in one position instead of splitting reps and I don't often look at Sean Payton and be like, dude, what the f*** are you doing? But Taysom Hill is one where I look at him and be like, dude, what the f*** are you doing? Either he's a tight end or he's a quarterback. You cannot be both. It's just not possible. But I digress. We were talking about Trevor Siemian. Next up, we have a couple of quarterback cuts from the Buffalo Bills. Davis Webb, perennial backup in Carolina and a whole host of other places. And Jake Fromm, State Farm.
He just couldn't keep up with Mitchell Trubisky, I guess.
Yeah, I don't. Jake Fromm's got no arm strength. I didn't expect him to stay around much.
So Jake Fromm should go back to State Farm?
Absolutely should.
Seriously, if that guy had had a good career, he would have got a State Farm sponsorship at some point.
Oh, absolutely.
100%. I'm Jake Fromm, State Farm. It would have been a thing. It would have been glorious. And the jokes would have been awful and amazing all at the same time. And Jared would have just loved it because that's his favorite kind of joke. All right, again, a couple of quarterback cuts. This time come courtesy of your Dallas Cowboys, excuse me. Garrett Gilbert and Ben DiNucci were both.
Oh, boy. Okay, so it was essentially down to Cooper Rush and Garrett Gilbert for the backup job. That we knew that going into the preseason. We basically both played in the battle, and Cooper Rush won, and Garrett Gilbert disappeared. He actually just got signed by the New England practice squad yesterday, I believe, or the day before. So he landed on his feet. Ben DiNucci, how can I miss you if you won't go away? To be honest, I'm shocked it took this long. He really epitomized Dallas's quarterback woes last year. I mean, it was just embarrassing, bad for the guy. Like, but not everybody is cut out to be quarterback, not even just a starting quarterback or a backup, but a quarterback in the NFL. And Danucci got thrown into the Wolves, basically, last year against the Eagles and performed poorly. And he continued to perform poorly in the preseason this year, overthrowing receivers, just looking lost, and he got cut, and Dallas is better for it.
All right. What we got next? We got a couple of wide receivers cut from the Philadelphia Eagles: John Hightower and Travis Fulgam.
Sure. Tell me about Travis Fulgam.
Okay. So, I was a little surprised to see Fulgam on this list. He had a deceiving year last year. He was relatively good. I'd say very good, all the way up until week 8 against the Cowboys. He had a good game there. And then the wheels just fell off. He had 8 receptions the rest of the year. This is, into Jalen Hurts time and everything, and he just could not keep up. And I guess it carried over into the preseason this year. They drafted a wide receiver. He just fell by the wayside and was no longer needed. His 8 receptions.
He helped cost me my what would have turned out to be a three-peat in our redraft league because I picked him up instead of was that Washington wide receiver that had like 2 really amazing games at the end of the season. I picked Fulgam instead of him, and it ended up costing me the championship, which would have been a three-peat. God, could you imagine how insufferable I'd be if I'd have gotten a three-peat?
So what Johnny is basically saying is when we reach week 16 or 15, do not listen to whatever fantasy advice he brings to the table that
Whoa,
week.
now hold on. I had a choice between 2 guys who were putting up good numbers to fill in to a slot, okay? So I chose wrong. I chose a guy who put up 15 points instead of a guy who put up 22 points, okay? It's not like I chose a guy who put up nothing. I just chose the guy who didn't put up enough points to get me over the hump because, again, fuck the Arizona. Yeah, that's right. I'm dropping an F-bomb there. We have a quote of them per show. I'm using one right now to say the Arizona Cardinals playing like the goddamn steel curtain against Seattle and down Russell Wilson in what had been an otherwise nearly MVP season, holding him to like 8 points? Seriously? Russell Wilson putting up 8 points cost me a championship more than Travis Fulgam versus whoever the schmuck was in Washington that I didn't pick up. Okay. I have some very deep-seated anger towards the Arizona Cardinals costing me a championship 2 years ago. Otherwise, I would have been a three-peat, and I would call myself the Michael Jordan of our fantasy football league. Okay? I'd be insufferable if I did a three-peat. I digress.
Ready.
I digress. Where were we? Fulgam and Hightower. Okay. Desmond Trufant was cut by the Bears. He is, of course, a defensive back.
That's surprising.
He used to be something great, and then he just got. I don't know what happened to him. I don't even think he's that old either.
Cornerbacks are buff, but I feel these guys need to switch to safety earlier in their careers. Like, you need to be really athletic to play that position.
It's very tough to be a DB in the NFL. Okay, Nick Folk, the kicker, was cut by the Patriots, replaced by a rookie. He's since been re-signed to their practice squad. Yeah. I'm a little surprised by that.
Okay, here's some fun facts about Nick Folk. All right. So he spent a bunch of time on the Jets. He ranks second on the franchise's all-time points scored. The Jets at 729 points. Not only that, he also holds the record for the longest field goal in the history, the AAF, at 55 yards.
Yeah.
What a king.
There you go, folks. An AAF reference. Which, if you're wondering, yes, we did try to do an AAF fantasy football league. It was horrible. It was awful. It was garbage. It was a waste of our time. We never should have done it, but we did, and it was awful, and we all had so much fun with how bad it was. Okay, let's keep moving. Nick Mullins, quarterback, cut by the Eagles.
He wasn't good in San Francisco last year. 12 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, but he did land on his feet. He ended up signed by the Cleveland Browns 2 days ago.
All right, there you go. I missed that one in my notes. Next up, Devonta Freeman was cut by the Saints. Not surprising. When you're running back behind Alvin Kamara, you don't really need.
Well, and Latavius Murray. I mean, he was a really, really great running back. He had like a 2.5-year stretch where he was phenomenal. Like top 5 running back in the league. And then injuries just caught up with him, and he just hasn't been the same. He missed a year. I want to say it was a knee injury, and just couldn't keep up.
If you're not really strong, you gotta stay athletic at that position, man. You can't lose a step. Like if you're a big boy, you can find a way to like prolong your career. But if you're those guys who are only like 210, 215 pounds or less, like you gotta stay healthy and you gotta stay athletic.
All right, that brings us up to our next guy. We got a bit of a run of running backs here. Peyton Barber was cut by the Washington football team. Again, I said this on like every episode. Pick up a name already.
I don't know how Peyton. I don't know how he keeps getting jobs. He's never been like I don't mean like I'm not trying to even be mean or anything. Like he's just not ever been a good running back. Like statistically, he's never done anything. I don't know. Maybe I don't watch enough. Maybe he's really good at pass blocking or something. But if his yards per carry over his career has been bad every season, I feel like there's a long list of running backs that are better than him and more productive that don't end up getting jobs every year, and I don't really understand it.
I don't know what it is about him that keeps getting him jobs, but they just need to stop already. Okay. Next up, Donta Foreman, running back Falcons. I didn't even know he was still on a roster anywhere
Same
at
here.
all. I just like that name. That's pretty much the only reason why he's on that list. Next up, another guy who just completely fell off what was productiveness for a good long bit there in Cleveland. Then he went to the Chargers. I think they were still in San Diego at the time. Travis Benjamin, wide receiver, is cut by the 49ers.
Yeah, it's there's certain guys who play long enough, and when you reach the point where your usefulness is up, show you the door real quick.
He has bad hands. He can't catch.
Now,
He drops the ball.
He's not even good at punt returns anymore, which was another area he was pretty good at previously.
Yeah, you just...
All right, Jacob Hollister, tight end, was cut by the Bills.
Well, they've got Austin Knox, I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you're probably not keeping 3-4 tight ends on a team.
No.
At least outside of practice squad.
All right, next up we've got another running back. Corey Clement was cut by the Browns. What? Cut by the Giants. Has since landed on his feet in Dallas. Okay,
here's a really cool fact for Corey Clement. his favorite football team is the Dallas Cowboys.
Hmm.
That
There you
is
go.
true. I mean, it makes sense. The Cowboys had some depth injury issues in the preseason, and picking up Clement's a good hand. Oh, you can slot him in there. So,
It definitely helps that he can, be that backup running back when Zeke inevitably misses some games.
yeah.
All
Well,
right. Next up, Rasul Douglas, defensive back in Houston. How bad do you have to be cut by the Houston Texans?
right? Like, Texans afford to cut anyone?
The league should allow the Texans to carry a 100-man roster, and they'll still lose like most of their games. All right. Next up, Jalen Samuels, running back, cut by the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Hmm.
He was okay, but not consistent.
I kind of thought he'd be the backup, if I'm being honest. Because I don't know who's behind Najee now.
Uh,
Because obviously Connor's gone. Now Samuel's gone.
McFarland, I think.
Isn't he technically a fullback? I mean, I don't honestly know. I mean, he might be the guy behind him on the depth chart, but I honestly thought he'd be the backup. Next up, Will Greer, quarterback, was cut by the Panthers and has yet to catch on anywhere else. I'm a little surprised by this.
Meh.
oof. But actually, McFarland's on IR, and we got Benny Snell and Kalen Balaj.
Oh, I forgot about Benny Snell. Okay. So then, yeah, that does make sense. I forgot about Benny Snell. I didn't realize they picked up Ballage.
Kalen
Balaj.
Balaj has been everywhere. He's been on like 4 different teams,
Miami,
and I
Arizona.
don't drafted by the Ravens, I think.
That would make sense. Um, but yeah, Will Greer. I thought he would. I thought he did well playing for Carolina. Was it last year?
Yeah,
I
but
didn't
he
think
was
he was
yeah,
bad. I
he was
should say
fine,
I
and he
didn't think
was
he was the problem in that team. Obviously with McCaffrey hurt, that offense was gonna suck no matter what. You know.
and plus he landed on his feet because he got picked up by Dallas.
He did get picked up. Okay, I didn't have that. It didn't show up.
Is fourth on the depth chart. Yeah, so it's Dak, Baruch, and Will Greer in the Dallas quarterback room.
All right, we're coming now down towards the end here. Ito Smith was cut by the Vikings. I think he landed on his feet, but I don't know where. Did he catch on somewhere else?
I'm not sure actually.
I mean, I think it's safe to say if you probably don't know, it probably hasn't happened.
On to the next.
On to the
He
next one.
is currently free agent still.
Currently free. Okay, I thought I saw he'd landed somewhere, but that brings us to our next one.
I guess he's not Itoing yards anywhere.
Oh God. All right, the Bears cut a couple of wide receivers, including one they picked. I don't want to say fairly early, but in the mid rounds. I think he was in the 4th round. I think Riley Ridley and Daz Newsome, who they actually moved up to draft, was cut.
Riley Ridley is Calvin's younger brother, I believe it is.
Yeah.
So lots of family ties because Daz is Ozzy's kid, right?
Think so.
I don't know.
Or maybe grandson. Ozzy's pretty old.
Yeah.
Either way, I'm pretty sure he's related to Ozzy Newsome. Okay, let's move on now to a trio of wide receivers cut by the Jaguars. Laquan Treadwell, Philip Dorsett, and Colin Johnson.
I'm a little surprised by Colin Johnson. He's a cheap contract and he's a big guy. I thought at the very least they'd try to like transition him to like tight end, see give him a shot there, but whatever. They apparently like what they got.
Kawan Treadwell can go home and smoke pot, just not on video.
Treadwell's another guy. He was
He's a guy, right?
a high pick for Minnesota.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He was a top 20 pick, I think.
Yeah, he was fairly early.
yeah, he never worked out.
Right up there with Kevin White. Lasted longer than Kevin White did, I guess. All right, next up, Dez Fitzpatrick, wide receiver, cut by the Titans. Antonio Gandy Golden, wide receiver, cut by the Washington football team. Again, pick a name, guys. Seriously.
I drafted last year, I believe it was.
Could be. The Cleveland Browns cut a couple of defensive tackles. Sheldon Day and Marvin Wilson. This next one, at least in part, hurts me deep down to my core. The Green Bay Packers had a couple of cuts. They cut running back Dexter Williams. No real surprise for me there. I didn't think they were going to carry more than 3 running backs, and I think Kylan Hill had definitely earned that 3rd spot this preseason, so I'm not surprised by that. But thinning out that wide receiver room, which is never something I like to see them do because it's already thin enough, they cut Equanimous St. Brown. That hurt.
Yes, Amari Rogers took a spot. Or Randall Cobb.
Yeah, both of them forced the cut.
I mean, time will tell whether or not it works out with Amari Rogers. I mean, St. Brown was good. I always liked him. He made some good plays in some tight areas. So I mean, I can see why Randall Cobb's obviously going to cut into that. They both like to get in the down and dirty areas across the middle. But yeah, it's sad to me. All right, next up, Wayne Gallman, running back, was cut by San Francisco, landed on his feet in Atlanta. I'm a little surprised that he's having a hard time after the performance he put in relief for Saquon Barkley last year. I thought he did pretty darn well.
He's a perfect example of backup that you can rely on, and I'm seeing talk that he might end up taking the starting job sooner rather than later.
Mike Davis?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I could see that because Mike Davis is another one of those guys who's a backup, at his core.
Yeah.
And got thrust into the spotlight when a star went down. Same situation, only he was thrust into the spotlight by CMC going down, whereas Gallman got the spotlight because Barkley got hurt. So
yeah, they had some parallels, right, last year.
Definitely run a parallel career track. So obviously that one could be an interesting competition here in the early weeks of the season. All right, we got one more name. Yeah, he was cut. He was cut by Minnesota to be re-signed the next day after they sorted out some IR technicalities, I guess. Everson Griffin, defensive end. We talked a bit about him earlier in that defense, so I don't think we really need to say too much about that. Yeah. So that's going to
seems like a
fair,
hey, we're going to sign you tomorrow. Let us just fix our books kind of thing, right?
I mean, that's exactly what it worked out to. They needed to put some guys on IR who were also going to make the roster that opened up some roster spots for him to slide back in, and it makes sense. I mean, that's the nature of how it works. All right, we had a handful of guys get tossed on the IR this week. Again, I don't think there's too much to any of these guys, but there's a couple names of somewhat significance. First, Danny Trevathan, linebacker in Chicago, was placed on the IR. You remember when he was the next big thing?
Yeah, Trevathan's a good player.
I'm not saying he's not a good player. I'm not saying he's not a
Roquan's
good
the
player,
next
but
big thing now in
when
Chicago. Roquan Smith is a
but that's my
beast.
point. Like Danny was brought in to be the he was brought in to fill that Urlacher spot, and be that core of the defense, and they signed him to that big contract, and then just a couple years later, they draft Roquan, and he just walks away with the position, and he's now the heart of that defense.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they went out and got Khalil Mack, who also who is the real heart and soul of that defense, but I digress. It's a different type of position. Being a linebacker versus being a stand-up rusher, which is what Mac is. Irv Smith, tight end, Minnesota, placed on IR. John Ross, wide receiver, New York Giants. I didn't realize he was still on a roster. I thought he was cut.
I mean, this is my surprised face. I'm not shocked, unfortunately, because he's a guy who, like a lot of players, had tremendous potential. He's a speedster, but
set the record in the 40.
He just can't stay healthy enough to show that on the field, and it sucks.
He's a guy who would have benefited being in like a Kansas City versus Cincinnati, where having that speed. Obviously, the perfect example is Tyreek Hill. If those two swap teams, are their stories that different? I don't know. Really, I think Tyreek still has better hands than John always did, but who knows how different things could have been. Jalen Hurts, running back, Las Vegas Raiders, placed on IR. And these last two guys, just because I love their names. One, because I cannot pronounce it, and name pronunciation is usually something I'm pretty good at. Cedric Ogbui, offensive tackle in Seattle, was placed on IR. I just love that name. I've always loved that name, even back in Cincinnati. And one of my favorite names in football, because it just always makes me snicker like a teenage boy. Willie Gay, linebacker, Kansas City.
Oh, he got Willie Gay's on IR? That sucks. Damn. That sucks. He's a god like him. Damn. That's rough.
Okay, that's going to
his
do it.
brother Izzy.
Yeah, we're gonna break the huddle here, and we're gonna move on to Dynasty Dimes. We only have one sort of two-part question for you in the Dynasty Dimes segment this week, and going forward, you'll be seeing this segment a little bit less because we don't have quite as much stuff to talk about. We'll probably do another bigger one towards the trade deadline, where we talk about guys who you should be or could be targeting, both for long-term improvement and short-term improvement on your respective teams. And this is sort of a question that I spent some time sort of pondering. Was one of those shower thought questions. Which guy would I want to lose? Which one would be the worst? So the question is, which starting position is the best to lose, and which is the worst to lose? So obviously I'm talking about having a starter go on IR and get hurt. Which position is the best to have that happen in, and which position is the worst to have that happen in? I'll give you guys a minute to think about that one, because there's a bit more.
I've got mine.
Oh, you've got yours already? Then
yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Okay. The best starting position to lose, I think, be a running back. Because running backs you can plug and play most of the time. Yes, it's a skill position. It depends on the offense. How good is the line? You could. I mean, I could run behind a really great offensive line. So it's less about the actual player itself and more what's around him. Backups usually aren't that far removed from the starter when you're a running back. Like we just talked about two situations with Gallman and Mike Davis. You lose the starter and you plug those guys in, and you're getting good, if not great, production out of them. It's not that far of a drop. That being said, the worst position to lose is tight end, because the drop off in quality for tight ends after top 5, top 6, you're not finding anybody on the waiver wire that can produce like that if you lose a tight end that is a top 5 or 6 player. You lose a Travis Kelce, you're not finding somebody with that production no matter what offense. No, you can't just expect the next guy up to be as good as Travis Kelce or George Kittle. So I think tight end is a much harder position to then just plug a guy in on your roster and think, okay, he's just going to perform the exact same way. Everything is the same. No, it's not. Is he as physical? Does he have good hands? Are they even going to throw to him as much? Showing the skill drop off. You're obviously going to hand the ball off to a running back. You're not as likely to throw a ball to a backup tight end in your offense. So, my 2 cents on that.
I disagree and agree with Jer. When it comes to the best, I don't agree with that being the running back. I think it's the quarterback position. If we're picturing, I'm just picturing a championship run in my head. And we're like, I'm assuming when we say a player, like Jer was saying, like a Travis Kelce, like a talented player. If I was to lose a talented quarterback and I'm on a championship run, I am more likely to be able to find somebody off the waiver wire or my bench likely that I can fill in and play matchups and still get good points. Though Jared brought up a good point with the handcuff, but you don't necessarily always have a guy's handcuff. So that's why I don't think I would make it the best, though it's better than other ones. I think quarterback would just naturally be the best because you're more. It's a lot easier to have the number 10 quarterback on your bench. You know what I mean? A lot of guys have that guy. You know what I mean? You might lose number of, for example, you last year, Jer, especially early in the season, if Josh Allen was to get hurt, Cam Newton was playing more than good enough before COVID hit him. You know what I mean? It would have meant nothing to you. You know what I mean? You would have just kept going forward.
I might have had 1 or 2 worse weeks, right?
But
not overall.
Derrick Henry last year, would you have been in this even if you had his handcuff? I don't think you're in the same position. I don't think you're a 2-time champion. So, it's always not that it's never a good thing to lose a star. But I just think the quarterback is a little bit better than the running back. Now, where I agree with Jer is the tight end spot. Because out of all the positions, what I'm picturing is what you're likely to have on your bench or available, in free agency or waiver wire, and those tight ends just aren't there. If you have one of those guys and you lose that guy, you just lost an element to your team. It's not something you can replace. You're not even going to be able to replace it with 75% of what you had, unless you just happen to have another one of those top 6 guys, which, again, go back to Jer's team. He had that last year, but most of us aren't in that situation. If you lose a top 6 tight end, you're probably playing number 15, and number 15 is really bad. That's a guy that might get you 2 points. That's a really bad tight end. You do not want to play that. Where if you play the number 15 running back, the number 15 quarterback, the number 15 wide receiver, that's a real player. Even if you play the number 20 quarterback or the number 20 running back or the number 20 wide receiver, that's someone who's still going to give you points on the week. That's a guy who's going to not kill your team on the week. If you play the number 12 to 20 tight end, you're going to get that you are now losing. You put yourself in a big disadvantage. You definitely have a handicap. So I'm with Jared on that one. Dude, you do not want your star tight end to get hurt.
I come at this from a very different perspective, I guess, than you guys. Because to me, I think the best position to lose is the tight end. From a different perspective, in that if you're not one of those guys who has one of those top three, if you don't have a Kelsey or a Kittle or somebody of that caliber, you're already looking at a guy who's sort of hit or miss. They can go off and they could give you 9, 10 points, or they could give you 2, 3, maybe 4, and are very easily replaceable in that regard that you're not expecting much out of the position anyway. So having your starter go out, and you guys kind of took it to the star perspective. I was just looking for starters. And I think that's the position that's more easily filled because you're already not expecting much from that position. It's safe to say that if you don't have one of those superstar stud tight ends, that you're not expecting much from that position anyway, and it's something that's built up in other positions instead. You have that depth at
Okay.
other positions that carry the weight of that missing tight end. So
Okay,
it's not
so
going to hurt you
you've got a
as much.
second tier tight end, let's say,
Mhm.
and he goes down, and you're not going to see that much of a drop off if you go and grab a guy off the waivers.
Exactly.
You're already not up there
Mhm.
on the tight end landscape, right?
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not, is it going to hurt? Yes, but going from a guaranteed, let's say, 6 points to maybe to a 3 to 4 points, you're not dipping too far down. Now that said, if you are one of those guys with a Kelsey or a Kittle or one of those type of players, then yes, you're screwed because the drop off is so huge. But once you get past that elite tier, the drop off is so steep that you're already at a disadvantage at the position that it doesn't hurt you if they're the guy that goes down. The worst position, in my opinion, to lose is your wide receiver. Because that's a position that's next man up. The guy you go and pick up off the waiver wire. Now, sometimes there are guys that are on the waiver wire that you're like, you can pull in a guy that's going to put up 20. But it's not a guarantee. He's one of those depth guys. He's a Travis Fulgam type guy who's having the Cinderella season that nobody expects. That yes, they might be able to fill in, but are they going to give me 20 or are they going to give me 2? And that's not what you want. Right? You don't want that chaos. You want those guaranteed things. Whereas a top end wide receiver who's guaranteeing you, 12 to 15 points a week in a half point PPR league like we are, that's the guy I want starting every week. The guy that's going to give me that 15 points every week because they're that guaranteed number. Running backs, like you said, you can plug and play extremely easily. I'm one. We talk about our leagues. I won redraft last year with my running back core of Wayne Gallman, Nyheim Hines, and Giovanni Bernard. Were 3 starters on my team for championship week. Okay? So if that proves anything, it's that you can find success from those, third tier, fourth tier guys that are on the waiver wire, or that you can acquire dirt cheap from other players because who cares? What am I going to get from this guy? So yeah, that's it for me. Like tight end because there's such a huge drop off early, wide receiver because you can't replace those guaranteed points. You're gonna have 3, maybe 4 guys on your roster that are going to cover those slots, and after that the pool dips because people are hoarding those guys that are guaranteed points, and you're stuck taking on the bang or bust guys. So that's why I say wide receiver is the worst and tight end is the best.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
that's reasonable. I mean, you have to hit on those guys though.
Well, yeah, but I
Also,
mean you have
the
to hit
thing.
on whoever you pull back, regardless, whether it's a quarterback or a tight end or a wide receiver or running back. You still have to hit on them. But I mean that's the thing about replacing any player. You have to hit on it, and that's obviously not a guarantee. But I mean that's the same regardless. But those are just the positions I'd feel more comfortable getting injured, or not injured for that matter, because you know it's easier to replace a hole at running back It's even easier to replace Hull at tight end if you don't have one of those elite guys. And quarterback is hard because if the quarterback goes down, that typically changes the offense a bit. If Josh Allen goes down, you're not getting those running yards. You're stuck with passing yards, and you're not going to get as many. You're not going to get as many touchdowns. The numbers are going to decrease. It just, the numbers drop when the quarterback gets hurt because they change the scheme, they change the offense a bit. Unless you have, a bona fide backup that's just going to slide in and carry on, which is not something every team has. All right.
I mean, it's like R. Kelly says, it's a hard knock life.
It's like, can we end it? Are we done?
Yeah.
I'm done with this guy.
Yeah,
That's a good way to end this. There's our segue. Jared's terrible joke. That is already there.
With a terrible joke to end the show. All right, guys. We're not gonna no 2-minute drill this week. We'll be back next week, where we will also be starting adding sort of a dual serve segment. We will be doing a pick'em, where we'll all pick winners of the games every week. We'll keep a running tally and keep track of our scores as the season progresses. And I believe, Zach, you're a resident gambler, so you wanted to give us a lock of the week, or not a Drew lock of the week, because that's...
No, so what I was thinking was we can look at the games. I'll pull up like the games for that week, and what we're gonna do is I'll name the game, and you and Jared, one at a time, will pick who you think's gonna win, and if you guys pick the same team, that's the team I'll pick for that part of the parlay, and if you guys pick opposite teams, I'll be the tiebreaker, and I'll pick it, and we'll build like a pro line, and then come the next episode, we can start that segment off with how our previous one did and how bad it was, or good if we won, and then we'll do another one. Then we can just do that every week. And we can call it Spend Zach's Money.
And if you would like an example of how Zach likes to spend his money, he currently took Northwestern to cover?
No, they were going to win, apparently.
He took them to win, and they are currently losing 31-14 with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter.
Let's spend Zach's money.
Have you already ripped up that ticket? I'd have already ripped up that ticket.
Oh, it's all
spend Zach's money because he doesn't know how to spend it.
All right, folks, that is going to do it for this week's episode. We will, of course, be back next week at our regular time. Wednesday night, we will break down... recording Wednesday night, and it will be up overnight Wednesday and early Thursday morning, so you can listen to us break down and discuss the upcoming action of the week, as well as providing our picks, both as gamblers and just general pick'ems as well. And we'll talk about the upcoming week in the NFL. Jared, tell them where they can find us.
You can find us on the Twitterverse at Handoff Inside. There's all sorts of updates on shows. If you want to follow the news, just give us a follow on Twitter. We follow back if you have content that you would like to also share with us. We will follow you back. And we are currently at... What are we at here? Let's see. We are at 794 followers on Twitter. So come join the party, and it's a good time. We recently roasted a guy in our Dynasty League who on his team he has Carson Wentz, J.K. Dobbins, Darrell Henderson, Cam Akers, Rashad Perryman, Noah Fant, Evan Ingram, and Irv Smith. He didn't have a good week last week. Come check us out on Twitter. It's a good time. And, yeah.
And you can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Inside Handoff Podcast, where we will hopefully in the near-ish future be adding a group where you can post your own hot takes and things like that. And who knows, maybe one day get featured on the show with them. All right, folks. For Zach, for Jer, I'm Johnny, and we will see you next week for another episode of the Inside Handoff.
Just drop it. I want you to drop it.